if your entire party is being like stuffed into a wood chipper, then you might need this much healing. But
And it's a wood chipper you can't stop, right? You have to just say,
yeah.
well, the only thing we can do is wait out the wood chipper's battery team. I will continually cast mass cure wounds every round until everyone persists through it.
Hello, friends. Robert Pevin here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're doing another cleric subclass. Today's focus is the life cleric.
Aw, this is like the default cleric, which is not ideal, but I think there are some redeeming qualities here. They're mainly in the spell list, but like I think you can, if you're having a first time playing a cleric, you don't need to play this. And if you're going to walk away with anything from this video, if you're like, should I play Life Domain? The answer is you probably have more healing than you need as every other cleric in the game, and anything this gives you is ghoulish overkill. And I don't think you should worry about it that much. Take healing word and you're good to go. But if you want to be the healiest healer that ever healed, this does have some stuff in it. Whether or not that stuff is useful, because again, healing isn't, you don't need that much of it. That is a different question, which we'll talk about. Want to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I really do think the domain spells do a lot of the heavy lifting for newer clerics because it is a pretty solid list for like at least half of these. Half of these are like a lot of just the bread and butter cleric stuff. Now, none of them are new to cleric, which is a little bit unfortunate because usually when I see these spell lists, I'm like, well, what does this cleric do that's different than other clerics? I get the kind of point of it, though, is to be the most cleric-y cleric that can cleric, so I understand why they don't get things outside of the cleric class, right?
The most
Uh,
healing-y cleric, anyway.
I think, like that's the whole priest archetype, right? That's the I'm a good aligned, hate undead, I respect and love life more than anything else. You know, the good holy, that cleric to me is this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be that archetype, and I would encourage people to seek others.
Sure, I absolutely agree that other archetypes are a very good time, and you can definitely play this a bunch of different ways. In any case, the first level options you get auto prepared all the time are Bless and Cure Wounds. I don't think you should ever cast Cure Wounds because you can just take Healing Word, and that's usually way better. But because this gives it to you for free, you might opt to just not even prepare Healing Word and just use this when you have to, which isn't the end of the world. It's worse, but it's not the end of the world if you want to have another thing prepared. And Bless is
Yeah,
fine, right? How do you feel about
sure.
Bless?
Bless is great.
Yeah, everyone gets a D4 on stuff. Why not? Lesser Restoration and Spiritual Weapon are our third level options for your second level spells. One of these things is unusable. The other one I rate quite highly, so that's pretty good. At an average
Well,
table, I think
spiritual
Spiritual
weapon is
Weapon's pretty
fun, and then
core.
lesser restoration, if you need it, is nice to have. But
Sure, it being auto prepared is genuinely a huge
right,
boon to it, right? It's one of those effects where you're like, oh, I stumbled into somebody that's incidentally paralyzed. I got you. I stumbled into a situation where everyone's poisoned and we need the paladin to not be poisoned. I got you. More, I think often what's going to happen is you're going to find this with spiritual weapon access. You're just like, oh, I can do cool things in combat and still live out the fantasy of I run around and heal people and I'm still contributing to ending fights, which I think is
right.
probably a good place for the new player cleric to be, right? Which is what this is. This isn't the base rules. This is accessible to everyone. Um, Fifth level, we get two spells, one of which I think is very important, the one that they don't. So we get Beacon of Hope, which I is not a good spell. It's never been a good spell. It won't ever be a good spell. It lets you choose a number of creatures that always regain max hit points from any healing they receive, and they have advantage on whiz saves and death saving throws. I just really don't think you'll ever cast that, even if you stumble into situations where you're making all of a sudden 150 wisdom saving throws. Revivify, on the other hand, and stopping death is a big perk. It's what Claire kind of brings to the table at fifth level, as this is the new tier of play we're in. We now have a solution to death, and that's pretty meaningful. It'll encourage you on you and spank a spell slot now and then. Yeah, but the second one's fine. The one Beacon, not so much. Any strong feelings about either of those?
Revivify is an easy win. That's if somebody dies, you'll be glad you have it.
Again,
Beacon
it's
of Hope. It's been such a long time since we did that video. I know people like it, but it's
those people
yeah,
are wrong.
especially on this cleric. I mean, this is just a fountain of healing already. Who cares if it's maxed?
And like that's before we consider hit dice, that's before full heal on long rest, it's before the reality of most tables not doing multiple combats per long rest, right? Like there's a lot of marks against healing in this edition. And Beacon of Hope sure is this option's ghoulish overkill. Beacon of Hope is a whole new level of ghoulish overkill on top of this.
Yeah.
Fourth level, we get Death Ward and Guardian of Faith. I don't like spending spell slot with Death Ward, but it is a neat effect. If you get super high level, you'll probably use it a bit. Guardian of Faith is neat. So Guardian of Faith makes a big guardian that hovers around and does 60 total radiant damage in the area to stuff. So like it's a kind of area effect damage that's definitely worse than something like Fireball, but it's unique to Cleric and how they handle it. And I like that. I like that there's this kind of, it can be targeted as single target damage by like putting it where the boss is going to be for a while. You could use it to try and deal 20 damage to 3 things. There is a little bit of flexibility with it. It's not, I don't think that raw power, but it is a fine little bonus damage option that, again, as a cleric, it's like, this is how clerics do their damage versus wizards. I like that differentiation, right?
Is that the one that covers an area but doesn't actually move?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all right if you can, if you've got a space covered that your enemies are going to have to try and get into. But
yeah,
it'd be cooler if you can move it around.
Definitely. It's a 10-foot radius, and you really will want everything, like, you kind of want this to work like a fireball. You'll want to, like, set it down, everything fails to save, the 60 points go away. If, like, 3 things pass, you only do 30 damage, and then they all move out of it, you're like, oh, that was bad. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes I think more often than not, you'll get, like, 5/6, if not all of the damage. So. 9th level, we get Mass Cure Wounds and Raise Dead. I actually like both these a lot as bonus spells. Oh, I lied. Raise Dead's awful. But Mass Cure Wounds is a fine option to get. Just because, like, Raise Dead is something you prepare when you need it, because you got 10 days of grace. So you
That's
actually
true.
never want it auto-prepared, right? Like, it's one of the worst auto-prepared spells you could put on a sheet. So, bummer there.
Yes, that is correct.
So, because you could just prepare that. Like, you finish a long rest within 8 days of the body dying. Great. Now you can prepare this, you bring it up, it's fine. Getting it here, waste of space. In any case, I do think like half of these are pretty castable, and Blessed Spiritual Weapon, Revivify, Death Ward, Guardian of Faith, and Master Wounds all kind of paint the picture of what the generic everyday cleric is going to do. You could really like go into a game as a cleric and say, I'm just going to not learn all the other spells and just use this list. And I think you're actually going to have a pretty meaningfully impactful time at a lot of tables still, just because the list they give you is what I would expect a cleric to do. And that's fine, right? Like you're going to want a couple other options, obviously, down the road. But if you're learning the ropes the first time, this does kind of give you a roadmap of where you want to be.
I don't know if anybody wants to play. This is like, we're going to invite the guy we don't like because we need a cleric. We need somebody to play a cleric. Here, you're playing this cleric in particular.
There's definitely a kind of person, I have a friend that's like this, where they all are about having, they're the teacher's pet, right? You show up to class, you get the A, you make sure everyone, you organize everything, you have 3 different calendar invites for everyone that's coming around to the different times for your graduation party or whatever, right? There are those kinds of super organized structural people that really put others first, that want to go, what does the party need? I'll just do whatever that is. And I think a lot of those people, without even being asked, default to something like this. And if they are playing the game for the first time, hey, at least this is kind of an on-ramp. It's not a great on-ramp because I think their features don't service the game as it's played. They service a game that doesn't exist. The pretend D&D that ones of peoples on this planet actually realistically have cured the rules towards. But at least you're getting a starting spell list that's pretty solid.
Yeah. All right, what else do we get?
Big perk for it. Bonus proficiencies. When you choose this level, the first level, you get proficiency in heavy armor. That's just great. Now you care about 1 fewer stat. You don't care about dex anymore. So you can just say my con is 16, my ways is 18, and I have a gigantic amount of AC from my armor. That's fine. Again, you'll be thick, you'll be hard to hit, you'll be able to be a little bit durable in combat. That's all just free upside. The actual first level feature you get, though, is Disciple of Light. At first level, your healing spells are more effective. When you use a spell of first level or higher to restore hit points to a creature, the creature gains additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. 99% of the time, what this means is you add 3 to your healing words, and that sure doesn't matter. That's just not enough. It's upgrading a D4 to a D8, basically, in the healing dice size, upgrading, like, you're just adding a little bit more numerical juice to things. This feature doesn't usually matter because healing is typically done when people are about to die, and the difference between 3 hit points and like 5 hit points is, or whatever, the difference between the amount you would heal and the amount healed is not substantial enough to like block a whole lot more hits, keep them up a whole lot longer rounds. It's not going to have that large of a meaningful impact at 99% of cases. Now there is an
I don't
exception.
know. I mean, like a healing word. What's that doing? D4
A
plus
D4
one
plus Wismod.
or plus Wismod. That's I mean, this could come close to doubling it. If you get a high roll, this is perhaps able to take a hit before going down again.
It could offer that sometimes at level 1.
Right.
And the moment something starts adding plus 3 or 4 to damage and is hitting with 2d6s, 3d6s, the things that monsters tend to hit with, well, that die size doesn't change or matter at all, right? Like, imagine spending a 3rd level spell slot and be like 2 plus 3 hit points as opposed to 2 plus 1 hit point. Like, it scales horrendously, right? At level
Yeah.
1, I will agree there's probably going to be some goblin encounters where that extra hit points do keep an ally up and around longer. I just don't think that there's not a lot of merit in that, especially whenever, if the encounter is going poorly to the point which people are going down, 1 extra hit might help them escape, but you would rather have a feature that would have prevented that happening in the first place, which again is kind of another one of those issues with healing. But this is not great, but again, at exactly level 1, 2, it's probably at its best.
What about when upper levels when you're using your mass cure wounds?
I don't really care about adding 5 to my mass cure wounds, and that's what you're doing. Or sorry, 7 to my mass cure wounds. Like that's just the difference in that number doesn't matter. What mattered was I cast the spell with it, right?
But it's, I mean, adding 7 to multiple people that you're casting it on, that's adds up to a lot of hit points.
It's 7 per creature, which is, it's hard to conceptualize in the grand scheme of like how much that actually will influence whether or not people go up and down. Because like most encounters aren't dropping a person. The encounters that are dropping a person are usually the majority of encounters that 1 or more characters are going down, which means those bonus hit points you're giving out to those other characters don't really matter because they're not going to likely go down anyway, right? So
yeah,
like if you want a lot of healing, you normally want it to be on one person that is designated to take a lot of damage. Then you give them like their hit points back, like all of them, or in the case of heal 60. Giving 7 extra to the wizard that's already at just half, the druid that's 3/4 of the way full, and the ranger that's at half, like they probably weren't gonna go down anyway, or if they were gonna go down, that extra 7 probably doesn't make a meaningful difference in that outcome, right? Like the mass cure wounds might be the difference that's keeping them up, but that extra 7 on top of the mass cure wounds, I'm not confident is that difference, right?
yeah. It's
I don't.
still a little more juice.
I think this feature is quite bad still. It is kind of funny with Goodberry because it doesn't say when you cast. It says whenever you use a spell of 1st level or higher, and giving Goodberries is using the spell? Question mark? I think that's the official ruling, is that Goodberries heal 1 plus 2 plus the level, so they heal 4 instead of 1. And whenever you use Goodberries with it, that is just, it goes from, 5 hit points to 20, and that multiplication is very good in your favor. So you could do it with Goodberry stacking if you want to be like, all right, we'll spend 2 1st level spell slots, get 2 people back to full, keep going that way. Maybe you dip into Druid for that reason, but or like even to take a feat that gives you access to Goodberry. That is a thing you can do with Disciple of Life if you want to try and maximize it. But I don't, again, ghoulish overkill. You probably don't need to be doing that. If you have access to Goodberry, you probably don't need any other healing for the most part, because someone goes down, you finish the encounter, you get them back up. Or you heal them back up in the middle of combat or whatever.
For what this subclass is, I like the feature. I mean, like you said at the beginning, you probably don't need this much healing anyway.
Yeah.
But if you want to be the healer, this is an avenue towards that.
Yes, if you want to say I have the biggest healing numbers at the table, this does help with that. Especially, and again, I think I kind of poo-pooed it off. Level 1 and 2, that extra 3 hit points, that is a goblin attack, that is a giant centipede attack, right? Like it can give you a little bit of that extra buffer that you do care about on something like a healing word. That is meaningful. It's just not that meaningful at like 3rd through 20th level. Second level, we get Channel Divinity, Preserve Life. So instead of using your Turn Undead feature, you can use Preserve Life. At the second level, you can choose Channel Divinity to heal the badly injured. As an action, you present your holy symbol and evoke healing energy that can restore hit points. Restore a number of hit points equal to 5 times your cleric level. Choose any creatures within 30 feet of you and divide those hit points among them. This feature can restore a creature to no more than half its max HP. You can't use this feature on an undead or a construct. I like that they kept that flavor in. They definitely could have thrown it out, because I don't think 99, not 99. I don't think a lot of tables are going to have allied undead or allied constructs that you would care about using this on. And from like a balance perspective, I don't really I don't think it's moving the needle at all as how powerful this in fact undead or constructs. But it is, a nice little flavor grounds. Otherwise, what do you think? 5 times your cleric level, healing.
Yes, but yeah, that last bit, this feature can restore a creature to no more than half their hit point maximum. That's kind of limiting.
I actually think that's really clever design because it tells players when they should use this. Because you shouldn't use this if players are at half their max HP. You don't want to use this to top people up or anything like that. It's a little bit annoying if you overheal anybody. But you do want to save this for a person's down, another person's about to go down. You go, oh, okay, great. I'm within 30 feet of both of you in my heavy armor. I'm going to get this person up, give them most of the HP, and then the rest I can give over to this character. Excuse me. And that is, I think, actually pretty clean. As again, for a new player option. I think that's a really clean strategy avenue to say you literally can't use this on characters if you would want to try and top them off. And topping people off with hit points is generally speaking a bad idea. It's a waste of resources. This doesn't even kind of let you waste it. It forces you to try and use it in situations where you can maximize it, which requires people being very injured, which is when you should be healing in the first place. So I like the design of this feature a lot. I also think if you have reserve life, you don't longer need mass healing word. You no longer need mass cure wounds. Just throw them in the trash. You have to take mass cure wounds because this option forces you to. But with preserve life, this could be the only AoE healing you literally ever need.
Yeah.
5 times your cleric level is a ton, right? Like 10 HP at level 2 is a decent amount. Gets 2 people up at 5 each if you want. At level 10, this is 20 hit points you're dividing, or sorry, it's 50 hit points you're dividing amongst people. You can just be like, oh, the one person that's taking the most damage, I get that person up that's in a safe area, and then I put the other 40 into the paladin that's holding down the horde. That's a fine place to be, I think, right?
If there's enough people in your party that are below half, and see, I'm having trouble imagining a window where you're going to get the most use out of this. Like, I want to, because I can heal multiple people, I want to, especially since, all right, is below half his max, but he only needs like 20 hit points to get him up to half. This guy over here, he's got 3/4 of his hit points. I can't do anything for him. Like, you know what I mean?
And what I'm saying is, in that area, you have no business using this in the first place. Like, it's actively bad for your team for you to spend an action doing that. So because that window is not there for it, you are told to wait. And when you wait, that character that's at half takes a couple more hits and maybe goes under. You didn't prevent them from going under, which you wouldn't have probably anyway. Now you can get them up from under and fill out all of the hit. You can even target this at one person if you need to, or in case of emergencies, you get 2 people up, you get 3 people up. You can maybe save the team from a TPK, right? You can say, I get this person up, give them 15 HP, and get the 30 on the other person that is taking a lot of damage. You're probably not hitting the whole party with this. I think at most want to hit like 2 priority targets with this, 3 in very dire circumstances. And I think that as a feature is pretty useful. It does a much cleaner job of something like mass healing word, mass cure wounds. Its job is very pointed, I think. And that means you're not going to use it that much. There aren't that many times that encounter is exactly happening. But you will use it instead of a healing word, I think, if you're out of spell slots. You'll use this instead of, if you have a 3rd level spell slot laying around, you want to use that on an effect. You'll use this to get someone off zeros to try and give you room to cast that 3rd level spell instead of casting Revivify, right? There is a little bit of play to this thing.
That's a nice thing there, at least.
I like it. I think it's a neat little feature. Again, it feels more like a teaching tool than an actual constrained feature for other power reasons. So I don't think it's even remotely too busted to remove that last line of text. But again, this will prevent the new player from going, oh, everyone's taken 7 damage. I don't know when our next long rest is. Have everyone's back to full. And then you take a long rest. You're like, that was a waste of 15 minutes. Thanks, guys. Anyway.
One thing I will give it credit for is it's just like another way to heal that's not a spell. But like you said, that allows, keeps your spells open.
Yes. This definitely just says, don't take healing spells. Which again, if you're watching this and you're playing a life cleric, you're down to play a life cleric, you really want to, take fewer healing spells. These features cover you plenty. 6th level, you get Blessed Healer. So beginning at 6th level, the healing spells you cast on others heal you as well. When you cast a spell at 1st level higher that restores hit points to a creature other than you, you gain hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. This is not a feature. You do not care about this feature. This is kind of like 6 to 9 hit points as a feature. That's not very good. Bummer.
No, it's a little extra juice, but nothing you need.
And we've definitely left the realm of Disciple of Life being good too. So we're really starting to be like, oh, okay, this Cleric option really is just for low tier beginner play. It's not really for anything else after that. And again, even for beginners, I'd rather them play a Cleric option that does cool, exciting stuff that gets them excited to keep. Says, I healed the guy from 0, which every single Cleric can do. But yeah, plus hero is not a good feature. We followed that up by another not great feature in Divine Strike. So at 8th level, you get the ability to infuse your weapon strikes with Divine Energy. Once on each turn, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can cause the attack to do a bonus D8 radiant damage to the target. When you reach 14th level, it increases to 2d8.
At least you're doing something besides healing this time.
Yeah, I like all of the Cleric options get this or the Potent Spellcasting. I think there's a new version of Tasha's, someone commented, don't remember off the top of my head, that like upgrades this slightly and everyone can take that option as a variant or whatever. At the end of the day, this option isn't built to be an attacky kind of character. You are kind of built to do Spiritual Weapon, Guardian of Faith stuff. You're kind of built to take spells that do damage or conditions. You're supposed to be using Bless and Bane, and the Cleric Saber dies. You're supposed to be like weaving in full caster materials. I think you're going to be very hard-pressed to ever really want to use this feature as a life domain Cleric especially. You can, it's just not very good. It's usually not going to be what your action wants to be. Your cantrips are going to normally do about as much damage as this, and that's never a great place to be. If you had like more compelling reasons, like Death Domain gets a big single attack that hits like a truck, right? If you had a reason like that to make attacks, like if you could use your attacks to restore life to allies or to give people 10 HP or to give yourself back HP or something, maybe we could talk about it. But just doing bonus radiant damage is not nearly enough to compel you to actually take the attack action on your turn, which makes this really, really bad. Like uniquely bad here.
Well, I think I still like it better than the what's the other option? The potent
plus Wismod cantrip damage.
Yeah.
I mean, I would take that over it because then at least it's slightly more damage and it's telling you to do the thing you're inclined to do anyway in dire circumstances, which again, you're normally not even in, so. Neither of these features are great. Neither of them work for the option. I don't think they should have framed it this way, but they did it anyway. Anyway, we end on Supreme Healing. So starting at 17th level, when you would normally roll 1 or more dice to restore hit points of the spell, you can instead use the highest number possible for each die. For example, instead of rolling 2d6 to heal a creature, you restore 12. This feature is bait. The reason this feature is bait is because the best healing spell in the game doesn't roll dice. It's Mass Heal. I'm sorry, that's Wish. Then the second best healing spell in the game, Mass Heal.
Excuse me.
You're good. Just gets everyone back to full. No questions asked. You don't roll any dice. You just do it.
Yeah.
The next best single target healing spell in the game is Heal. And that's just 60 hit points. There's no dice involved. This feature only works for spells you stopped casting. Whereas, like, my healing word heals 4 instead of a D4 now.
This is and this makes what is it called? Beacon of Hope even more useless.
Also true, which is again forced on your sheet. It is probably at its best with like a Mass Cure Wounds healing, what, 24 plus 5, 29, something like that. Maybe 29 plus Wismod, so 34 hit points, as opposed to the average of that, which is 17. Okay, at 17th level, that is not something I care about. If I need a heal, I'm putting the whole team back up to full with, 500 hit points plus worth of healing. An extra 17 to 5 creatures for the one time I cast Mass Cure Wounds per long rest. That's not a feature. It reads like a feature in a world where there's 700 healing spells that all use dice and they've been scaling throughout the game, and it's critical that you keep casting spells round after round that restore hit points. This is a feature, but that's just not how Dungeons & Dragons plays. It's never been how Dungeons & Dragons plays. I don't know who playtested this and found that this was an exciting capstone option, especially given that it's the one that they released in the base rules that everyone has access to. I guess maybe this is just an indicator that they said, we don't need to playtest the upper levels. No one's going to get there anyway.
Yeah, man. If your entire party is being like stuffed into a wood chipper, then you might need this much healing. But
it's a wood chipper you can't stop, right? You have to just say, well, the only thing we can do is wait out the wood chipper's battery team. I will continually cast Mass Cure Wounds every round until everyone persists through it. So all things considered, I don't hate this thing at levels 1 and 2. It's not great. But the floor being auto-prepared Bless, proficiency in heavy armor, your healing words are more meaningful again in the lowest tier. That tends to be the most lethal. It'll be when Life Cleric feels its best. And even Preserve Life at 2nd level is going to be a good chunk of like, I can use my spell slots on better things and just use this to get people up. Those two things combined, I think, play pretty well at giving the fantasy of the Preserver in the lowest tier of play. 3rd level up, I think this thing's pretty friggin' bad. Like, this is one of the worst options in the game past 3rd level. So at least it tells you what spells to take. So it gives you Spiritual Weapon and Guardian of Faith, and which is fine, and Revivify, which is something you could have already gotten as a cleric, right? Like, this is kind of as a cleric roadmap more than an actual cleric option.
Yes.
I think it's a D from me then. Like, I get its purpose in the game. It's just not doing anything powerfully or interesting, I don't think.
D sounds good because I think, yeah, this is not something I would want to play. It's not something I would encourage other people to play. They say, oh, but a cleric, that's supposed to be the healer, right? And I'd, point to all the other clerics. They can all do enough healing already. Take somebody that can, you can be the healer if you want. You probably don't want to be, but even if you do want to be the healer, fine, but be the healer plus something interesting.
Yeah.
So
there's like this weird element of D&D that we don't really talk about that much. So the healer archetype, as far as like how it plays, I think is what really set it in motion what a healer looks like from a gameplay perspective. So if people are familiar with MMOs, people are familiar with big bombastic team play games, you have these characters that throughout the entire fight, their rotation, their different abilities, their decision-making points, when they're curing things, when they're firing things off, in these high-paced action environments where you're putting out a bunch of fires, that healer archetype exists. That healer archetype doesn't exist in a very slow, single-action, low-complexity environment that is D&D combat. D&D combat doesn't support 30 different things given conditions and a bunch of flexible tools to engage with them. It doesn't give, we can just out-sustain the damage it's taking by me channeling life into you with this ability, right? The gameplay just isn't suited for a healer to exist in that fashion. So a lot of people might come in with the perception of, well, like all good kind of team games, I'm aware of it's the ethos. Someone needs to be the healer, right? No, you just don't. Healing is something you do to get someone back into a fight off of 0, and that's 99% of the battle at almost every table. Very few tables are playing optimized. Very few tables are playing like big raid encounter, well-balanced encounters. And for that reason, the healer is not a needed archetype, I think, at all. I think you can have tables that genuinely don't have anyone with any healing spells, and if you get a short rest and you take long rests, you will be fine. Buy a couple healing potions, that covers almost all your problems.
Yep. Yeah, the game I'm playing now, I don't think we have a healer. The game I was playing before didn't have one.
Yeah.
It's possible.
The game was designed with that premise in mind. They wanted people to play whatever they wanted, which means healing isn't good because it's not necessary, and thus the necessary options are killing things usually. And this is worse at killing things.
All right. Well, that was the Life Cleric. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.